Imagine a world with no referees, no judges, no rules, just powerful countries playing an endless game of Risk with nukes. Well, that world almost became our reality after World War II. And that's when a bunch of exhausted, traumatized world leaders decided, yeah, maybe we should get some kind of global bouncer in here. That's how the United Nations was born, along with a whole ecosystem of international organizations that now try to keep the world from tearing itself apart. But today, those same institutions are under siege. The question is, can they still govern a world where power is shifting faster than climate zones? Let's start with the basics. International organizations like the UN, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, NATO, the IMF are meant to do two main things: keep the peace and keep the wheels of global cooperation spinning, whether it's coordinating humanitarian aid, resolving conflicts, or deciding who owes what to whom. These bodies are supposed to make sure that countries play nice. But here's where it gets messy. Because international governance, it isn't like running a country. There's no global police force, no single president of Earth, and definitely no universal timeout corner for bad behavior. It's more like a very tense group project, where one guy owns half the supplies, another guy keeps threatening to flip the table, and the rest are just trying not to get kicked out of the room. In theory, these institutions operate on consensus, mutual benefit. In practice, it's politics, pressure, and power games all the way down. Take the UN Security Council, for example. 5 permanent members with veto power: China, Russia, the US, Mayor France, and the UK. If even one of them says nope, then a resolution can die on the spot. That means a single country can block action, even if 190 others agree. In 2024 alone, Russia vetoed a resolution condemning its cyber attacks, while the US vetoed a ceasefire proposal for Gaza. 2 global flashpoints, 0 consensus. And that's the thing, as the world becomes more multipolar, with rising powers like India, Brazil, and even regional blocs like ASEAN gaining influence, the old system, designed in the aftermath of World War II, feels increasingly outdated. Meanwhile, the WTO is still stuck in a loop of trade disputes between the US and China. Since 2023, the organization has been paralyzed because Washington refuses to approve new judges for its appellate body, essentially disabling its top court. It's like suing someone and the judge just never shows up. That's not governance, it's a diplomatic staring contest. The IMF and World Bank, criticized by the Global South for favoring Western interests. China, unsurprisingly, has started offering its own alternatives through institutions like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the Belt and Road Initiative. If the old financial order feels unfair, countries are now building parallel systems. That's not cooperation, that's fragmentation. Still, it's not all doom and dysfunction. The WHO, despite all the political noise during COVID, has helped coordinate vaccine rollouts, manage outbreak responses, and push for reforms. NATO, though strained, has expanded its role with Finland and Sweden joining in 2023 and 2024 respectively. And the International Criminal Court? It's been surprisingly bold lately, issuing arrest warrants for war crimes, even when it ruffles feathers in Washington or Moscow. But here's a bigger twist. What happens when international organizations themselves become battlegrounds for influence? In March 2025, China successfully got one of its diplomats appointed as the head of the International Telecommunication Union, an obscure but powerful UN agency that helps set global standards for things like 5G and internet governance. Western analysts warned this could tilt the playing field in favor of authoritarian digital policies. That's not just bureaucracy, that's soft power warfare. And then there's AI. Yep, even artificial intelligence has entered the global governance arena. The UN held a high-level summit in February 2025 on AI safety and ethics, with heated debates over who gets to set the rules. Should it be open source and free? Heavily regulated? Who owns the data? Who gets the liability when your self-driving car crashes into a Tesla bot? The EU, ever the overachiever, proposed a binding international AI treaty. Yeah, the US said, maybe let's not rush it. China offered its own vision: tech innovation first, ethics second, if ever. So basically, the global AI governance conversation is off to a blazing start and already in gridlock. All of this brings us to a bigger question. If these institutions are struggling to govern the old world, How can they possibly manage the new one, where pandemics, climate change, cyber warfare, and tech disruption don't respect borders? And maybe even more importantly, do people even trust them anymore? Surveys from Pew and Gallup in early 2025 show growing skepticism. In the US, trust in the UN is down to 39%. In France, only 27% of citizens believe the EU has improved their lives. In India and Brazil, there's growing impatience with the slow pace of reform in the global financial system. When faith fades, power shifts. And when power shifts, systems break or get replaced. Now here's a wild thought. What if international organizations don't need to be reformed, but reimagined entirely? What if instead of giant bureaucracies crawling toward consensus, we had decentralized networks that respond to crises in real time? Crazy? Maybe. But that's exactly what some global thinkers are now proposing, a kind of governance 2.0. Less about voting blocks and vetoes, more about agile coalitions, AI-assisted decision-making, and crowdsourced solutions. Think less United Nations, more united platforms. For example, look at how global scientific communities tackled COVID-19. The fastest vaccine development in history wasn't led by a single government. It was a coordinated sprint between researchers, pharma giants, and yes, even Reddit threads. That's a model of decentralized cooperation that worked. Now imagine if that same model was applied to climate crisis response or disaster relief, where every country, every expert, and even individuals could plug into the solution in real time. That's not science fiction. In 2025, the Climate Crisis Response Grid, a pilot program between the EU, Japan, and Indonesia, is using AI to monitor real-time emissions, automatically issue alerts, and recommend policy interventions tailored to each country's energy infrastructure. It's not perfect, but it's fast, flexible, and bypasses the usual UN bottlenecks. But decentralization has its own risks. Who sets the rules in a world with no referees? How do we prevent authoritarian regimes or corporate monopolies from hijacking the system? And what happens when a country simply says, "No thanks, we're out"? That's not a hypothetical. In January 2025, Hungary officially announced it would defund its participation in several EU-wide programs, claiming national sovereignty overrules global governance. Poland and Slovakia have echoed similar sentiments. And in the US, several politicians are campaigning on a promise to withdraw from the World Health Organization altogether. This pullback trend is part of a larger wave of what political scientists call retreat nationalism. Countries aren't just protecting their borders, they're retreating from multilateralism entirely. And while that might sound patriotic, it raises a terrifying possibility. If every nation decides to go it alone, who's left to hold the line when the next global crisis hits? The answer, ironically, may not lie in more governance, but smarter governance. Picture this: a global digital twin of Earth, powered by real-time data from satellites, sensors, and AI. A living simulation where climate, economy, migration, and conflict hotspots are modeled days, or even weeks, ahead of real time. This isn't fantasy. In 2025, the European Space Agency launched its first Earth Mirror prototype, and the UN is reportedly exploring how it could be used for disaster prediction and humanitarian coordination. Add to that the rise of AI diplomats, digital negotiators trained on decades of treaties, cultural norms, and ethical frameworks. These bots aren't replacing human diplomats yet, but they're already being used in back-channel negotiations to find compromises human negotiators might miss. And unlike humans, they don't sleep, hold grudges, or storm out of meetings. But even the smartest algorithm can fix broken trust. Trust is the currency of international cooperation. And right now, that currency is devaluing fast. When powerful nations ignore international rulings, when trade deals collapse without warning, when military alliances fray under pressure, smaller nations take notice, and they start hedging. That's how new blocs form. Old alliances die, and chaos creeps in. Look no further than Africa in 2025. With the African Union gaining strength and several countries rejecting IMF loan conditions in favor of BRICS-aligned funding, the continent is carving out a new, independent path. It's not anti-globalist, it's post-globalist. Tired of being told what's best by Washington or Brussels, African leaders are now drafting their own governance frameworks, focused on regional resilience and digital self-sufficiency. Meanwhile, in Latin America, the newly formed Pacto del Sur is attempting to coordinate trade, health, and AI regulation across Spanish and Portuguese-speaking nations, sidestepping US-led structures. This isn't a revolution, it's evolution. And speaking of revolutions, don't forget about space. With private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and China's state-backed actors eyeing lunar mining, orbital internet monopolies, and Martian settlements, international space governance is lagging way behind. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967, yeah, the one written on typewriters, is being stretched to its limit. In 2024, both the US and China began testing resource extraction from the moon's surface, prompting urgent calls for a new treaty. As of April 2025, negotiations are ongoing, but with little agreement in sight, so here we are. In a world where climate change doesn't wait, AI doesn't ask permission, and billionaires are launching rocket wars while diplomats debate lunch options. What good is global governance if it can't keep up? Some say we should abandon the system, others say we just need to update it, but maybe, just maybe, we need something more radical. Not a world government, but a governance ecosystem, one that blends nation states, tech platforms, NGOs, citizen networks, and yes, even AIs, into something smarter, faster, and more accountable. Because the next pandemic, the next financial shock, the next war, it won't knock, it'll just walk in. The real question is, will we be ready? So let's rewind for a second. Remember when we asked what role international organizations really play in today's world? Now we know. They're struggling, adapting, innovating, and in some cases, being replaced. From AI diplomats to decentralized coalitions, from digital twins of Earth to rising regional powers, governance is evolving right in front of us. But evolution doesn't guarantee survival. The old systems weren't built for a world where pandemics move faster than politics, where climate models update daily, and where power is shifting from palaces to platforms. If we want global governance to mean something in the 21st century, we can't just patch the software. We might need to rewrite the code. So here's the final question. Do we fix the world order before it breaks? Or do we wait until it's too late to even log in? If that made you think, hit subscribe. And let's keep exploring where this future is headed together.